I'm just trying to get something Blue Jays in front of me on my computer and make sure it'll actually let me record it. All right, I think I'm good to go. I'm going to give it a shot here and see what happens. So, Blue Jays fans, welcome to another fun evening of Jaybird watching / the Walk-Off podcast. So here we are. It's Blue Jays playoff times. How's the walk-off feeling? And who's joining me?
It's been a fun time to do podcasts, my dude. It is not always the most fun to talk Blue Jays baseball, but my goodness, this is the wheelhouse right now, let me tell you.
Yeah, and to that point, we get as many Schneider curse words in as we have the funnest subtle celebration talk ever. And then we pop champagne and go completely crazy.
Yes.
So did you happen to get a chance to watch all the fun that was the playoff celebration the other evening?
I mean, I caught a lot of the clips and stuff like that. It looked really fun. I love it. I love the celebration and stuff like that. I mean, I saw a stat recently where this was the 9th time since Blue Jays inception in 1977 that they've made the playoffs. So it doesn't happen very often. I think we all remember the 22-year drought there right before 2015. So I'm all for celebrating it when it comes your way.
Oh, yeah. You got to take the pieces when it comes your way. And as far as it goes, the Blue Jays have earned it this year. And to that fact, they earned it so well that that one extra win was just enough this season. So how are you thinking your thoughts are on that?
I mean, just seeing all of I think it was yesterday was the anniversary of all of us needing to watch the Red Sox come back on the Nationals to end the Blue Jays season. And man, I'm just so thankful that they got that extra win. There's going to be some home playoff games. We're not all just downtrodden and needing to do podcasts about, well, what do we do to fix this?
And the difference in the world is literally, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had 91 wins last year. We have 92 now.
Yes,
and it's literally the difference between wild card berth or not. And then the fun part about it is with the new rules, we would have made the playoffs even a couple wins less. So it's thankfully Major League Baseball actually, changed the rules. But we would have won this spot last year anyways, given the extra win.
Exactly.
So it's all that extra. But yes, we got that, 0.billion% better to be able to get in this year. And how important
would you say it's safe to say that the expanded playoffs is a big success?
I do think it's an expanded success, as we have Blue Jays dad joining us from a remote location somewhere in Minnesota.
Hey guys,
it's so cool to see it. What's up, buddy? So we're talking the fact that the one extra game was the difference in the world this year.
Yeah, so. No, it's awesome. I'm so pumped. I think it is a success, the expanded wild card. And also the series, having a wild card series instead of just a one game.
Yeah. The only thing that shocked me in the midst of this whole thing was the fact I missed the one game, oh my God, sudden death level that we were getting over the last few years. You're not going to have the Edwin walk-off home run kind of thing going on anymore when you have a 3-game series. Unless you are in that everybody won one game each kind of thing. So I do like the 3 games.
More stable person than I am. I cannot take it. One game, my God, those were the worst.
So to that point, I think there was something to that because I love the fact that if you just were looking for a ticket to the dance to get into the real part of the playoffs, this is what you need to do to get to that level, correct? So there was something fun to that whole thing of let's just build this up and make it obscenely large, throw everything at it. And to that point, I missed that, that one year that the Rays happened to just sneak into the playoffs on game 162. I liked that, incredible nonsense you get the last day of the season.
You just like chaos.
I thrive on chaos. I'm an engineer by day. That basically feels like I'm fighting fires all day. So we do have some other fun people joining us. Mr. Craig Ballard is apparently on the line, who I am inviting to speak right now. So we're just going to keep dumping in Blue Jays Twitterverse into this lovely podcast episode as a joint Jaybird watching and the walk-off podcast. Fun. So feel free to take the co-hosting reins as anytime you feel like here, buddy.
All right. Well, should we talk who we think is going to be in this playoff lineup, or what are you thinking?
I would think that would be a fun place to go because there are some guys that are outliers and some people I'd like to see. Who is on the outside looking into you right now?
Well, I think it really depends on whether Espinal and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. are healthy or not. I know that I was looking, Chris Black, producer with Sportsnet, is just killer on Twitter for stats and stuff like that. Down to Black, I think it is. And he had just posted about Luis Castillo and how often he throws his fastball and the fact that he's got some real high velo and that he only throws his changeup to righties about 11% of the time. So you're going to see a lot of fastballs, and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is the best high velo fastball hitter on the Toronto Blue Jays. So it is likely, if he can be put into the lineup, that is something that they're going to try to do. He might not be ready to be in the field, which would eat up that DH spot. Kirk's already in the lineup catching for Manoah. So Danny Jansen only has, I think it was Chris had put on this Twitter thread, I think it was he's hitting a $176 against anything over 96 miles an hour, which is Luis Castillo all day long. So you might see Danny as a bench bat in that first game. It's going to be interesting. Again, like if Lourdes isn't good to go, then this is all out the window. If Espinal is healthy, I think he's still lost his spot. But of course he's going to be on the playoff roster and just be on the bench. What are you thinking? Like, who are the guys you think are on this team right now that are going to be on the outside looking in?
So outside looking in, I think right now, I think you spelled it pretty damn correctly for as far as the offensive pieces go. I think that Santiago Espinal has lost his spot as much as I am a giant Santiago Espinal fan. But to that point, he has a very extended future with the Toronto Blue Jays in this organization. So I'm not going to terribly split hairs to the fact that he is a great person to have coming off the bench in whatever weird situation this team gets into, assuming he's healthy. But to that point, I think that having Lourdes Gurriel Jr. jump in on this is just going to be insane. And I don't like the fact that everybody's throwing a little bit of water at the fact that he's been hurt. He hasn't been doing well. Does anybody remember how hot this gentleman was? Not even a few weeks ago.
I mean, he carried the team for almost 2 months. Like when we were all pulling our hair out about no offense in July, Gurriel was hitting.
Now hold it right there. That's a bald joke. I'll need to jump in at this point. Now hold the phone a minute.
I was just going to start bringing in Blue Jays dad and Craig Ballard here again, just for the hell of it. But the fact that you're saying you're not fooling on the pineapple haircut here, you're going to go on the bald side here?
Yeah, well, I am bald. I don't have a choice. Bald is beautiful. Where's Tim McAuliffe? Get Tim McAuliffe involved here.
Oh, that's too funny. So, but yeah, but Craig, what are you thinking? And Blue Jays dad, when you chime in right after Craig's done here, who do you think is on the outside of the playoff roster here that is going to just miss it?
Well, I'd be interested to see
what who's the key Zimmer. Piece that's that last piece.
Yeah, Lourdes is the domino that has to fall. For me, even if Lourdes isn't available, either one of them coming back, all I'm concerned with, like Lourdes or Santiago coming back, is that it doesn't do anything to mess with not having Whit Merrifield in the lineup. And I know for a lot of Blue Jay fans, that's very odd talk. I'm huge on Whit Merrifield. I'm absolutely huge on Whit Merrifield. If you look at the Blue Jays over the years, I mean, my God, the Alan Burns, Chris Coughlin, Chris Drury, Alan Hansen, they've tried Superman guys. They've tried 1,000 guys to be their version of Whit Merrifield, to be that super utility guy. Well, at the trade deadline, they get the actual Whit Merrifield. So I'm way, way in on him. I think he brings so much versatility. We joke about my bald head, but the reason for the bald head is because how many times are the Blue Jays too often home run or bust at the plate. Whit Merrifield brings a whole bag to the plate. And if you take your mind's eye back to how this team got into the race last season, that September, that was just incredible. That was all on the strength of the bottom of the lineup. The top was doing their thing, sure, but that 7, 8, 9, Lourdes hitting in the 7, Jansen hitting in the 9, caught fire and carried the day. Well, fast forward to right now. Yes, Jansen may struggle tomorrow, but he's been on absolute fire, and Whit Merrifield in that 7 or that 8 spot. So for me, it's either Whit in and Espinal out, or Whit in, Lourdes in as well, and a Zimmer out. I would like to see a Tapia out myself personally, but I think it's either going to be Zimmer or Bradley Jr. But my main point here, guys, is let's get excited about the X factor. Let's get excited about what Whit Merrifield is going to be able to do for this team.
It's like you've been reading the podcast gospel I've been saying, Craig, because that was my pick to click for the first series here was Whit Merrifield is red monster hot. Just to give you the fun rundown of my new gang that I got, I unfortunately have lost Brendan Panikar and of course there Chris Key to the free agent wire / retirement. So I had a couple new guys with me on Ken and Jason. So they picked Matt Chapman and Danny Jansen to be their picks to click for the Toronto Blue Jays X Factor level for this series. Blue Jays dad, how are you feeling on that? What might be the key factor out of Blue Jays like lineups? Maybe it's one of these guys that's the unsung hero of this coming series.
Yeah, I'll echo Craig and say Whit Merrifield is the guy. I don't think he's just hot. I think he's now who he is as a player at this stage of his career. So, a guy that can hit the ball to all fields and make things happen without a home run, or can hit that homer. And solid defense, and second base is his favorite position. And so I think, all signs point towards that. I think I read from Wilner today, I'm not sure who it was, but a tweet that someone had spoken to Santiago Espinal, and he is fully healthy, but has not yet heard if he'll be included on the roster or not. But coming off the bench, that's great. I'm not as down on Tapia as Craig is. I think he's a guy that can come through in clutch moments. He seems to make good contact in high pressure, high leverage moments. So I'll stick with Tapia off the bench. And Lourdes, I guess, you want to get him in there, but at the same time, I don't know how it works when it comes to players' timing. Lourdes did take a number of months to get going, if we don't forget that. And I'm wondering if he doesn't have the time to get it going again.
Yeah, I agree with you that time is a wonderful thing. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, I wonder, too, if you hold out Lourdes for game one, if you go with Tapia, I think Lourdes' value really is in that game, too, because we definitely don't want – what if I'm even wrong about Tapia and he's not the bum I say is no matter what, we don't want Tapia in against Robbie Ray if Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is sitting there. So no matter what, game two maybe is something to look forward to for Lourdes. And as far as Whit, I keep having people say, Craig, how do you reconcile the fact that Whit Merrifield had such a bad season? I've honestly, guys, I've thought about this, and I think there's something here. You look at Whit Merrifield came into this season knowing that the only organization he's ever known, Kansas City, his whole home, where he met his wife, all that stuff, he knew he would not finish. He knew he was done as a Kansas City Royal. At the trade deadline, he was going to be moved. So between his ears, I don't think he had his regular season. I don't think he was fully embracing the season because he knew it had to be 1 foot out the door. And it wasn't by choice. He knew he was going to be on his way out. Now he comes to Toronto. Of all the teams, all due respect to the Jays who we love, that's his worst case scenario, right? The whole vaccination. He goes through it with his family. They go through it. Have you noticed Whit Merrifield lately, to Blue Jay Dad's point, it's not just that he's hot. Guys, have you noticed the personality coming through? He's mugging for cameras. He's getting involved with teammates. He has become, before our very eyes, a Toronto Blue Jay, and I think it's awesome that he's under contract for next season. But I think this guy has really just now found it mentally, hey, it is what it is. I'm a Toronto Blue Jay. I'm here for one more year. Look at the fun these guys are having up here in Canada. Who the heck knew? Look at this fan base. Who the heck knew?
Yeah.
I think Whit Merrifield, before our very eyes, is becoming a Toronto Blue Jay.
Throw this whole thing out there. Go ahead. I just want to make one quick point, and I'm going to let you talk Blue Jays, Dad. Was it the last home game before they went on the road trip to Baltimore? He was the one that said, "See you Friday."
Yeah.
Meaning this Friday.
And honestly, I'm not even
Thank
kidding.
goodness
As
it wasn't a
silly as sounds,
Tuesday.
he went out. Well, he
exactly.
went out of his way to go find the camera to say that. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, he looks like he's enjoying himself right now.
Correct. So go ahead, Blue Jays, Dad.
Yeah, I would say similar with Matt Chapman. Do we remember the Red Sox series? Obviously, when the Jays broke the record for their number of runs scored at a game. I can't remember if it was that game or that series where Matt Chapman had a couple of really stellar defensive plays. And to me, it seemed like he became part of the team or felt part of the team in a full way after he made those plays in Fenway Park. I don't know if you guys remember that or not. But it seemed like there was something where just his place on the team was solidified. Like he proved himself, to his teammates. And I think that's what's happened with Merrifield lately as well. Like he's shown his stuff. And he's playing his best brand of baseball. And there's something about that, I think, in a ball player's head that you've kind of earned your way. You've earned your place on the team. You're accepted. And you come alive in all these different dimensions that you're not alive when you're the new kid on the block. So Chapman, I think we saw that earlier this year. We're seeing it with Merrifield now. And let's ride the wave. Who knows what next year holds? And then they do have an $18 million option for 2024.
Oops.
Oh, boy.
Well, to that point, if he keeps playing like he's played for the last, 3-4 weeks? Maybe. I don't know.
Well, Blue Jay Dad, you just laid out the exact opposite of the Jonathan Villar situation, Blue Jay Dad. Jonathan Villar never became a Blue Jay, did he, guys? That was the complete opposite of what we're talking about right now.
Very much so. Walk-off, what do you think on that one?
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone has said. I'm high on Witt too. Go with Merrifield, and he just lengthens that lineup so much. And it's a power heavy lineup, and it's nice to have somebody. And this is what I love about Lourdes coming back. If we can get his timing down at the plate as well, as my goodness, to see Witt and Lourdes, hitting singles all over the diamond and getting on base for the big guys at the top of the order. That's pretty exciting stuff.
I do want to be this guy that points out that we got 52 RBIs out of Raimel Tapia, Craig. Just saying.
With a trillion at-bats. He had a trillion
But to that point, who was doing those at-bats while Lourdes was hurt?
Of course that blind
265 isn't horrible anymore in a shit baseball era as far as pitchers reigning supreme.
Wait a minute, keep going, because I noticed you haven't mentioned the on-base percentage, which wasn't even 300.
Correct. I'm just saying that something about playoff baseball can spell success for somebody like Raimel
For
Tapia.
fourth outfielders, Craig. Don't you know that? That's their wheelhouse.
Well, I hope I'm wrong, man. And halfway, I don't hope I'm wrong, because I would just get lit up on social media. So really, I don't. But the Blue Jay fan in me hopes that I'm wrong. I'll tell you that. And listen, there could definitely be a scenario where he's called on to be that base runner, to steal the Dalton Pompey. Remember, the Jays didn't advance in 2015. Dalton Pompey stole some bases. I know, still to this day. I think Dalton Pompey is still standing on third base in Kansas City right now from that ninth inning. I think he's still there as we speak. Like that whole thing, I know.
And Kevin Pillar never stopped striking out from that moment on.
Oh, good Lord.
Valid point.
Boy, this took a dark turn fast, eh?
I'm sorry. Let's get back to more popping champagne and stuff. So how many beers and champagnes could have Hazel May thrown on top of her the other night? The poncho did nothing. And she even admitted that. She was like, why did I even wear this? The hat was the only thing that did anything, apparently. But good stuff. But to that point, so let's talk the actual game tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock Eastern time. The Blue Jays take on the Seattle Mariners. It is a pitching matchup for current-day baseball of epic proportions. Luis Castillo, who could have easily been a Blue Jay at one point during the trade deadline. We even all heard the rumors going around, this, that, and whatever it might be. He ended up becoming a Seattle Mariner. He is going against the stud of the Toronto Blue Jays staff, which is the workhorse Alek Manoah. And Blue Jay Dad is thumbs down in me to freaking bejesus here. So, but anyways, walk-off, how you feeling with Manoah going against Castillo tomorrow?
I'm an optimist. I like it. I honestly love this matchup. The Mariners are coming in on a cold September. The Blue Jays putting together one of the best records in baseball for the final 30 games of the year. I mean, it's a 3-game series. It's going to be a bit of a crapshoot, and the pitching is really good against us. But honestly, this is the best I've seen the offense coming together all year.
I will agree with you on that
statement.
statement.
The sturdiest and the best I've seen it all year. Like, if there's a time to go into the playoffs, this is it.
Yeah, I think David Phelps and Ross Stripling both echoed that in the most recent YouTube session for the Toronto Blue Jays as far as the going to the playoff session that they more or less had the other day on that. And if anybody hasn't watched that on YouTube yet, I highly recommend that extra innings bit that they did. It's very, very cool to see, especially somebody as a seasoned veteran like David Phelps talking about getting into the playoffs and doing what they're doing. So to that point, it was really, really cool to see how that went. And it's echoing that same mantra that you were there. We're here. We're going to run. We're playing the best baseball that we have been playing all season. As Blue Jays fans, we've been spoiled a little rotten to the point that we're even getting jaded about most of this season, that we were whining about how bad the bullpen was one month. We were whining about how bad the offense was one month. We couldn't pitch to save our lives one month. But now it all...
Don't forget about complaining about starting pitching. We did that plenty too.
I said pitching. Okay. So, but to that point, you agree with me that there was always one piece of the puzzle that wasn't working, right?
Truly.
And now it's all good.
It took until September for it to really feel like a cohesive unit up and down the lineup.
Yes. And to the fact that you are seeing Bo Bichette, Vladdy, everybody in that lineup really find a way to contribute. The fact that you're watching Danny Jansen turn into 2 home run king from the 2020 playoff season before our eyes in September. You're watching, every little piece of this lineup find a way to nick, claw and scratch into lineups and whatnot. The fact that somebody like Trevor Richards, who we were seeing maybe turn around and have a rough spot, is found a way to put enough together to finish the season strong. And you see, to that point, our game 1 starter, Alek Manoah, literally getting better as the season went along. Yeah, he had a little rough spot there, but he had one of the best Septembers in Toronto Blue Jays baseball pitching ever.
Yeah, incredible. Absolutely.
Anybody want to run with that? Well, and to the Blue Jays fans that are listening that are outside the current talking group, if you want to talk, just raise your hand and I will get you in the conversation.
Tomorrow's huge, guys. I mean, it's only a 3-game series, so the sheer math of it, yes. But let's not forget, and I've had the pleasure of being on the Walkout podcast a few times, and we've waxed on this, and we've never come up with a good reason why. But the truth is, this Blue Jay team, with all the good hitters being righties, except for Raimel Tapia, all the other good hitters being righties, they've had 32 starts against lefties this season. They've won 12 of them. Like, they've just been atrocious against lefties. So I'm petrified of Robbie Ray in Game 2. If that's a game that the Jays have to win because something has happened in Game 1, I'm absolutely petrified of that. And I think it's really interesting, guys, that we've been waxing poetically here about why we're excited about the Jays' chances going forward. And we haven't even mentioned the reason for the season. One of the best leadoff hitters in postseason history. This is the time of the year. This is the reason George Springer was given that contract, for his postseason prowess. We haven't even mentioned him kicking off this lineup yet.
That is a very valid point, that Springer is of epic proportions at this. This is his stage. This is where he wants to be. So are we seeing repeats of George Springer going on this postseason? Walk off. I'll give you the chance to go first. And Blue Jays Dad, please let me know if you want to chime back in.
What's been so interesting to me with George Springer is how much he has progressed with his ability to just be on the field since coming off of injury. I mean, my God, watching him baby that elbow when he first came back. I just had zero confidence that he could get through a major play. Like, they were DHing him almost the entire time. It felt like when he was being put out into center field that it was almost out of necessity, like it didn't feel
Somebody
like
had to have a break.
Exactly. But in the last 3 weeks, I mean, he's looked the healthiest he probably has all year. He's swinging. His timing's down. He looks comfortable at the plate. He looks good out in the outfield. I think we are literally seeing George Springer round into shape right at the perfect time, which is what all of us said. I'm sure everyone here on all of our podcasts have probably combined said it a million times that if we can just get George Springer into the playoffs healthy and able to play every day, then the season was a success. So, I mean, knock on all the wood, but looks good.
Right now, I feel like I don't have enough wood around. In my cubicle of my own office in my own home. But to that point, I agree with you that home run he hit the other night, the last home game, just looked like a typical everyday crushed George Springer home run. He wrapped up perfectly. There was no lingering effects in that follow through of his swing. It was a thing of pure beauty. So if that's the kind of swing we're going to continually get out of him, I think that's going to be the best thing. Go ahead, Blue Jays Dad.
Yeah, I've said this a lot of times the last couple of weeks, but I do think Springer he's a catalyst. I do think Vladdy is the heart and soul, and if Vladdy gets hot, look out. The rest of it's all history from that point.
And that might be happening too.
Yes, because that hasn't happened yet. So I think we're all hoping it happens now in the postseason. Every player has that one stretch. Vladdy never had it this year, so maybe it's coming in the postseason. Also, I just wanted to mention, I'm probably going to have to hop off here in a little bit, but I was just, while you guys were talking, I was looking at the 4-game sweep that the Jays suffered at the hands of the Mariners back in July in Seattle. And I was just looking at the scores and the pitching. There was a lot of bad pitchers we had then. The Mariners. Yeah,
that was a completely different team they played that week.
Yeah. Yes, and Romo, Sergio Romo gave up a loss in extra innings. Manoah lost.
Forgot we had him.
Manoah lost, but he only gave up 2 runs. The Jays scored 1 run. And then Simber blew another one. I'm not sure how all that worked. But anyway, I guess a lot of different it's a much different ball club under Charlie Montoyo at the time. That was kind of his kiss of death road trip, the West Coast. And so anyway, I looked at their games against the Mariners in Toronto. The Jays took 2 out of 3, so let's hope history repeats itself.
I was at all 4 of those games in Seattle where they got swept, and I'm not going to any of these wild card games, so hopefully that helps too.
There you go. We got the bad juju off of that one. But to that point, to your point, you saw that team firsthand during that series. Did that feel like the Blue Jays team that we are watching right now?
Honestly, it felt like rock bottom. I mean, to be in a stadium on the West Coast of America and have it completely overtaken by Canadians, to not be able to use that to your advantage. Honestly, it was mind-blowing. There were over 50% Blue Jays fans there. And of course, everyone that was in Seattle had taken the weekend off and was vacationing. So, everyone was loose and drinking and super loud, and they never capitalized on any of the momentum. They didn't. I don't know, man. It was honestly the worst of the worst. It was rock bottom. And after that, they got rid of Montoyo, and it's been all uphill.
Yeah. So to that point, going to the offense, the pitching, whatever you want to consider, this is a huge, obviously, series for Blue Jays history, not just wins now. I wanted to mention, as far as another piece of Blue Jay history here, that we all saw a few weeks ago, and I want to say it was mid-August, that the Blue Jays' current team actually got to meet the 1992 World Series champion Toronto Blue Jays players. Do you guys think any of that mentality seeped in? I know it was only a really difference of one win to get them to the current situation they are, to playing a home game tomorrow in Toronto for the American League Wild Card Championship, I guess is what you want to call this round. But how much do you think that influence might have weighed in on that to make this team that much more hungry to go on the run that they did for the end of the season?
Well, at the very least, that's got to be motivating for them. It's one of the things, when I talk about this a lot. There are athletes that will get, and Alek Manoah is one that got right away. Scotty Vibes on the Raptors, Scotty Barnes right away. There are athletes that get when you're the single sport in the country, like basketball or baseball, that you're representing Canada, the whole country, and they will understand the beauty and the magnitude and the relevance and the incredibleness of that. And there are others who are just going to chant USA, 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 and are not going to get it. If there are some of those on this team now that aren't going to get it, they would have from that. Here's 30 years later, these guys coming back, and the entire country is thrilled to see them. The ratings were through the roof for watching the ceremony. People who I have family members who couldn't see the ceremony. Every single one of them PVR'd it. I didn't watch it. I saw that. I don't know. Anyway, but I digress. But a lot of people, I think at the very least, it would have shown the players that, oh my goodness, when you win in Canada, when you win for Toronto, it's a bigger deal than maybe we might have realized. And you look at, I always think of like Taijuan Walker as the example. Remember Taijuan Walker? He was a Blue Jay in 2020. The Jays went to the playoffs. Now, that was the COVID year, right? So they didn't play any games in Toronto. The playoff series was in Tampa. Man, Taijuan Walker was going out of his way. He was trying like crazy to re-up with the Toronto Blue Jays, and he kept mentioning how the fan base was incredible. He was never even exposed to the fan base in actual Canada. Remember the Jays-Yankee game last week where Judge hit the 61st off Meza to blow that game open? But the Jays had just tied that game at 3. That was 3-0 Yankees, and the previous afternoon the Jays just tied it at 3. And during a pitching change, Bo Bichette was on second, and he said after the game, during that time, he couldn't hear himself think. It was straight goosebumps. He's never experienced anything like that. These are the things that are going to mean something to these players. Hey, Bo, I got news for you. That wasn't even playoff atmosphere, Blue Jay fans. Wait till you see it on Friday. Wait till these players see it on Friday. I think they would have got a taste of it. And you always hear players talk about when they find out they became a Toronto Blue Jay, I reached out to my buddy, to this buddy, to that buddy. They're always hearing reports from other players that, oh, you're going to Toronto? Oh, my God, wait till you see it. And seeing those players come back and how revered they were was just going to re-emphasize that. So I absolutely think it would have been a motivating factor.
Yeah,
Craig
Blue Jays dad, you got
it
something
here.
to say?
Sorry, go ahead, guys.
Go ahead, Go ahead, Walk Up. I almost said what you got the wild card bonus round thing going on your handle.
That's right. Yeah,
such a good host.
I just wanted to reiterate what Craig was saying, is that I think it does blow some of these players' minds what having an entire country behind you really is all about. And being on the road is quite an experience. I know I was lucky enough to be at that Pirates Jays series at the beginning of September. And obviously Pittsburgh is just a god-awful team, so they don't draw dick when it comes to crowds. But it was, once again, completely taken over by Canadians. And when they came back in that second game and Bo had the winning single there to drive in a couple runs, and everyone was going crazy on the Saturday night and chanting "Go Jays, goes." I know that there was about half a dozen of that team that just came out after it was all said and done, and all the Toronto fans had stayed behind, and they just kind of tipped their hat to the crowd. Like it's a pretty humbling experience to see how well Jays fans travel. And to Craig's point, these kids are going to be like, their minds are going to be blowing to see a playoff game in Toronto.
So I'm going to call out a specific interview here, and I'm going to let you two chime in on this whole thing. George Springer, obviously, we were already talking about his playoff prowess. He got a chance in one of the interviews I saw. Him and Bo Bichette were literally cornered basically by Candy Maldonado, Dave Winfield, and Devon White. And they were talking about the catch. What kind of thing do you think that has on the psyche of somebody already as good as as George Springer, going, wow, that's the kind of thing that you're going to be known for in Blue Jay lore for the rest of your life if you do something that kind of epic on a playoff scale. I just thought it was awesome that Springer got the pleasure of even, picking the brain of 3 world champions like that anyways.
And you say they cornered them. So I've got a real scary visual here because that's 3 big boys you just mentioned. That's 3 big boys.
Winfield especially, get loud right there.
Goodness. But honestly, it's funny you bring up Winfield. Winfield would have been leading the charge of exactly what we're talking about. Dave Winfield played, 15, 16 seasons? One was as a Toronto Blue Jay. And to this day, he says it's the most enjoyment he's ever had as a fan. A fan, I beg your pardon, as a player. But it's just along the lines of what we're talking about. Can you have that signature moment? If you have a signature moment for the Cleveland Guardians, that's still a big deal. That's still living your big league dream. That's still a big deal. I would submit that.
But it wasn't in the movie Major League, so it only makes so much sense.
First of all, great point. Yes, you got a great point there. But I really think that it just packs a different punch to do it in Toronto. Like I was saying before, the one sport, like not hockey, there's a lot of Canadian hockey teams, but the one sports where you're representing that entire country, having these guys come back and relive moments like that. This is 30 years later. I can't even believe that. How old am I? Wow. But this is a long time later, and I just don't think it would be lost on the players that when you do something epic in Toronto, it is that big of a deal. Look at the former Blue Jays, in fact, that had no success here. Ricky Romero's taken the red-eye to come tonight. Travis Schneider has packed up his family and is on his way to Toronto for this. Like, that's the impact that this fan base has. That's the eyes that are about to be opened on this team. And I think they're going to be so excited. I halfway, not fear, but I do hope it's not going to be intimidating for them because I can see this group of players, especially the Slim Daddy Vladdies, the Bo, the Bigios, I can see them really almost pressing to want to do well. So I hope it doesn't go too far where that creeps in. But ultimately, on the whole, I think it's nothing but an amazing thing. I thought it was a great job by the Blue Jays to do something like that. Yes, it was a 30-year anniversary, but honestly, I don't think it's that coincidental. I think Shapiro and Atkins fully understand that they've opened a playoff window. The Blue Jays are going to be in contention for a few years. Let's, as quickly as possible, let it be known to our players what that means, because it packs a different punch in Canada.
And this is where you really do hope that the fact they went out and spent big money on George Springer, a guy with experience, a guy is a playoff gamer. This is where you hope going out and getting a Jackie Bradley Jr. and signing a Kevin Gausman. Getting these guys who have that playoff experience, have been there before. Hopefully that does ease some of the pressure on this young core of Bo and Vlad and Kirk and these 23-year-old kids who Craig might be right. I'm sure game 1 is going to pop out some eyes, even if Manoah wants to pretend like there's no way he's faced. It's going to be pretty cool to see.
To that point, Manoah's going to be so pumped up in that first inning. He's going to go 3 punchies and out, I think.
Or he hits a guy first.
Uh-oh. I didn't say he wasn't going to hit anybody. I said he was going to strike out 3 people.
But Scott, you're so right. It's such a great point too, because with the veterans here, what I could see, what the young guys trying to do too much, I could see a George Springer, somebody like that saying, "Now wait a minute, now I see you doing this for part of your routine. I've not seen you do that before. Yeah, I know. I thought I saw you do that before." And pulling it back, saying, "No. It's a bigger stage, granted, but it is the exact same baseball that you grew up playing. If we went down the street to the Little League, it's the exact same baseball being played." I think the veterans absolutely will have that effect on them, especially because when you're saying that, it was making me think how worried I am about Game 2, because it's a lefty, Robbie Ray. The veterans' presence, like the Springers in that clubhouse, they won't have the team concerned going into Game 2. They won't have the team worried about that. That's just me as the fan worried about that. But it's a great point, Scott, to have that veteran leadership. And again, this isn't just any veteran leadership, man. This George Springer is one of the postseason performers in the history of the game.
I mean,
so the reason. Oh, go ahead.
People say clutch isn't real, but clutch is 100% real, and Craig just really hit it out of the park here when it comes to what George Springer can bring to a team in the playoffs, right? Like, he's been there, he's done that. He's performed on every stage at every level. And when the chips are down, and we've seen it all season long, when this team was scuffling, who showed up? Even even off the IL with no elbows. he was the leader of that offense there in late August.
You bring up a fun point about the clutchisms and people saying clutch isn't a thing. Being a guy that played baseball all the way through my college career and played on some championship teams, and to that point, people that don't know what clutch is or can't quantify it didn't really get into those situations, in my personal opinion. So it's one of those things. It's 100% real. And being able to run through all that pressure and still come out on top, that's what playoff dreams and fantasies and everything are made out of. That's the reason you get the Joe Carter walk-off home run. That's the reason what this team has done all season long, coming back and grinding. That doesn't just happen by happenstance. That happens because somebody put it to work, right?
100%.
So the reason I bring up all these lore things and all this fun about Blue Jay history and what's going on currently is how fucking loud is the Rogers Center going to be at first pitch tomorrow night at tomorrow evening at 4:00. And anybody that wants to chime in on that, I was there during the Tulowitzki at bat against Mariano Rivera in the 9th inning in the 2015 season, right after we acquired him. And I literally couldn't feel my feet because the ground underneath me was shaking so much on the 100 level. That was a regular season game. So it is time to get loud.
There's going to be a lot of text messages between the TV executives, Major League TV executives tomorrow, saying, are you seeing what they got going on in Canada? Okay, from now on, it's primetime games for the Blue Jays. Are you seeing this? From now on, it's primetime games for the Blue Jays.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you because the fact that they put, I agree that this is a wild card game, so you might want to put the quote unquote higher seed game on live TV, but correct me if I'm wrong, the New York Mets is the evening game at 8:00. And I would say that the Blue Jays have a better matchup against the Mariners in a regular game versus the Mets and I forget who they're playing now. Why am I blanking? So, but anyway, Padres. I would have made the argument that the better matchup and the better game, especially with the sheer primetime environment, is going to be the Toronto Blue Jay game tomorrow night.
Yeah, totally. Castillo against Manoah, epic.
Especially when the Mets are saying, DeGrom, we just might not pitch him against the Padres. Why not? But to that point, the Mets have that crazy pitching staff, so I'm guessing, they've earned that fact. If they don't want to use DeGrom in that first series, go for it.
I have to jump, gentlemen. Really, really enjoyed myself. Appreciate you having me on. Go Jays, go. Let's do this again.
Hey, Craig, before you jump off, do your shameless self-promotion plug. Go for it.
Oh, good. Hey, I'm only promoting you guys. I wish. I don't have the time to do content anymore. I really wish. It's Jay Birdwatch. It's the Bird Watching podcast and the Walk Off podcast. I'd be recommending the Blue Jay fans to check you guys out. I'll tell you that.
Appreciate it, Craig. Cheers, bud. Go Blue Jays. So Walk Off, I've been running this show. You want to chime in with any good points or anything you would like to chit chat about?
Do you mind if I take the card and put it way, way, way ahead of the horse, or are we?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
This is half your show too. It's your call.
Okay. Well, what do you think about this? So, as we all know, the Atlanta Braves, World Series champions last year, and definitely heavyweight favorites. They've got their work in front of them to get past the Dodgers. However, they are a very, very good team this year. The Blue Jays, number 1 seed in that wild card seeding. Home field advantage, also a very good team in the American League. And as we all remember, 1992, it was a Braves-Jays World Series. Now, obviously, I'm really taunting the baseball gods here, so I'm going to reel it in a little bit here.
Gentle.
But think about how cool that is. Just even the fact that both the Braves and the Jays have even put themselves in a situation where, history could be repeated 30 years later.
I do think there's some bits of irony to that, and I don't know if I like how the baseball gods would shine on us and the fact that World Series would repeat. Remember,
Let's not forget, I asked you
series.
if I could put the cart ahead of the horse. No.
Let's say it did come down to that. And like I said, that was a really tough series. You're talking that really came down to a couple of key things in that Game 6.
Truly.
That it could have easily been a Game 7, and God knows how it would have turned out. So, yeah, I really don't know if I like how you're talking to baseball gods, my friend. But I do love history, and I'm a very firm believer in those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. So I'm in the school of thought that we came out on the right side of that the one time. So if it came down to it, my worry is right now, if you look at the teams that are in this playoff race, and the two teams that were the hottest teams going into the playoffs here were the Atlanta Braves and the Toronto Blue Jays. And I don't think you'd find too many people disagreeing with that.
Well, that's fair.
And to that, Blue Jays fans, obviously this is a joint Jaybird watching and a walk-off podcast thing. There are plenty of you on here. If any of you would like to talk, I am watching. Please give me the raise your hand thing, and I'll get you in on the list on the chit chat here. So to that point, how do you see some of this other stuff? Do you see the Blue Jays or the Dodgers making it by the Braves that are red hot or not?
It's tough to bet against the Dodgers. I mean, they've done an incredible job of building a waterproof
You're
farm
betting against
system
the casino, I feel like, in that situation.
Yeah, I mean,
the house usually wins.
Truly, but they've only won in that 60-game season. I mean, the Dodgers have been World Series contenders for a decade now, and they've only got one in the shortened season. So, I mean, nothing's a given. You still got to go through the rigors of the playoffs. We watched Atlanta take it all last year with one of the worst records going into the playoffs, a record that was worse than both Seattle and the Blue Jays in the American League, who missed the playoffs. So, it's about getting there and being hot at the right time. And you touched on it. Atlanta is hot right now. I wouldn't bet against Atlanta personally.
Yeah. So Caroline is joining us and going to chit chat. What do you have on your mind, Caroline?
I have on my mind the 4 games that we got swept in Seattle. That was before the trade deadline, correct?
You are correct.
And we had Montoya.
I believe Schneider was running the ship. You were at that game walk-off, weren't you?
No, that was Montoya. That was before he was let go.
That was the last one then.
Last series before he was fired, yeah.
So we have a lot of different players. Like in 2020, Randall Grichuk was our third. He was batting third. So I think we have a way better team now.
Yes. I would tend to agree with you in the fact that it's 2 different teams. You're facing John Schneider management versus Montoya, to your point, Caroline. So there is a lot going in the Blue Jays' direction. And honestly, and the two of you can correct me if I'm wrong, how much does this put the Seattle Mariners on their heels going, we beat the Blue Jays up for a 4-game series in our ballpark. Let's just take it to them in their ballpark. Do you think that gives them a false sense of security and they don't really know what they're in for at this point?
I would think so. And plus with that roof closed and 50,000 plus people in that building, they're going to have a hard time.
Yeah. It's the Thunderdome for a reason, right?
You got it. You got it.
So the Sky Dome will be flying.
Like I was at the very first game in 1977 in Exhibition Stadium.
Wow.
Sitting in snow.
Yeah, and which the Blue Jays, correct me if I'm wrong, they ended up winning that ball game, correct?
I think the White Sox won.
Okay, I couldn't remember, but to that point, you were there. I'm going to take your word for it.
Exactly, I can't remember it. I think so. Yeah.
But that is so cool that you as a Blue Jays fan get to have that piece from 1977 all to now through the World Series years when I became a Blue Jays fan, because that's unfortunately just my age had the fun here. And watching them through the late 80s into the early 90s, they were the best team in baseball. And we're having that same kind of resurgence again in Toronto Blue Jays baseball with this young club that we're going to get. Hopefully this is the beginning of greatness. And we've seen it last year with them just missing the playoffs. This year they make the playoffs. Hopefully it runs into crazy things, but the young core of this team is going to be together for the better part of the next 3 years. So this could be
they got begin. Like that, what's his name, Barger?
Yeah, Addison Barger. Yeah, he's been...
There he goes.
Saying that he's a lot like Juan Soto.
Yes. And then that's not even getting into the fact that we have a Beltry in the in the minor leagues. Yep. So there is a lot of good things.
Yep.
And Caroline, where are you joining us from?
I'm in
Toronto
Burlington.
Too?
I'm in Burlington.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Well, it was very, very good having you on the show here. We do greatly appreciate it. Is there anything else you would like to?
Nope.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Anything else?
For letting me talk. No, that's good.
Good deal. Well, thank you very much, Caroline. And make sure you check us out on the Jaybird Watching podcast and the Walk Off podcast.
Sure, for sure.
Appreciate it. Anytime. We're going to have a few more of these, I think.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So, Walk Off. Let's say we go into game 2 here. It is going to be Gausman, Robbie Ray, it looks like.
Yes. That's what's slated anyways.
Correct, but there is that wonderful wild card of the fact that Kevin Gausman has a cut on his finger.
Correct.
Well, apparently it's all better.
It's what I keep hearing, but to that point, it still could be sensitive. I don't know how bad it was or anything. It wasn't like a few years ago, I forget which pitcher gave us the monster, disgusting picture of his blister, but I wanted to say it was Aaron Sanchez.
Yeah.
Caroline's all over it. Yeah, appreciate it. So how confident are you feeling with that matchup, too? Because that's another epic proportion level.
With Robbie Ray, you mean?
With Robbie Ray versus Gausman.
I'm feeling confident because Robbie Ray gives up a lot of home runs. And they know him from last year.
I'm wondering how much Pete Walker has left in that.
Yeah. Pete Walker had a big bunch in him.
Yes. And to that point, I'm wondering if he kept that one secret that keeps us in the in the right rein here. So
yeah.
I sure am curious to see how this plays out if the Blue Jays wind up taking game 1, because I'm really curious if it's possible they flip Strip and Gauze for game 2, so that if for some crazy reason the Blue Jays can get out of that wild card series in only 2 games, you then have Kevin Gausman lined up against the Astros and Justin Verlander, both game 1 and game 5. And boy, I'd sure rather see Gausman lined up for 2 games than Strip. Not that Strip hasn't been incredible this season. It's just, I don't know how you feel. Are you, do you think there's any way Gausman doesn't pitch in game 2?
I do like where your head's at. I don't think it's going to happen, though. And I think a lot of that's the fact that they still don't know what they're doing, I think, between the argument of Barrios versus Strip.
Yeah.
And I think they would rather push that to the next series to even have that argument would be my philosophy. So, because to your point, I think Strip has earned a chance to pitch in the postseason. And I
agree with you.
Yeah. As much as I love Barrios, and I'm the weird one here that I've seen Barrios since his minor league days here in Rochester, New York. And because at the time we were the Minnesota Twins' minor league system. Mm-hmm. And it's just how it was. So he's always been up and down, but never to this extreme where he's a god one start and horrible the other start.
He goes like heckle and jive, you know.
So my worry in the midst of that is that he is going to The nice thing, at least, is if you have him in this series start, Stripling's used to coming out of the bullpen. So if you see any weaning in that ballpark of him having a bad evening, you just pull Strip out of the bullpen and run with it.
They are going to need 4 starters. This is the thing. Jose Barrios is going to play into this whole playoffs if the Blue Jays do take care of business. Like, there's no way around it. You can't roll with a 3-man rotation for the entire playoffs, especially once you get into the division series, and especially if you wind up playing in the ALCS. You're just going to need the length that he's going to give. He'll only probably pitch the 1 game. But, I mean, if this Toronto Blue Jays team is going to see true success, I think that it is going to be from good outings from Jose Barrios.
Exactly. And I think our bullpen is way better than last year.
Truly, they augmented it very well at the trade deadline. The addition of Anthony Bass has just given John Schneider so many other options when it comes to earlier in the game. Like, you've just seen him deploy guys like Garcia and Simber at different times than you would have seen without Anthony Bass being available. And I mean, I had wished they had done more when it came to the bullpen at the trade deadline, and now I'm fine with it. Like, I was wrong on that. They filled out the back end.
I think 90% of Blue Jays Nation was wrong on that trade deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still
wish
they
right
would have
pieces
gotten
for the
a
right
starter,
team.
but what do you do?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But you can't. But to that point, would you in right now if you signed Frankie Montas and brought him in, and you had him in from that trade deadline and had him for next year too? Would you have been really happy?
No, like
He's been
after
horrible.
seeing him with the Yankees, I am so glad we didn't get him.
And then to that point, the only one that's been a trade acquisition by most teams as a pitcher that has actually legit worked out is the one we're facing in Game 1 in Luis Castillo.
And boy, did he work out.
Syndergaard hasn't been anything. Syndergaard has been barely anything for the Phillies. He's been salvageable, but he hasn't been.
Yeah, the Phillies have got their bullpen is horrible.
Yeah. So
so's their defense. The Phillies are going nowhere, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's going to be interesting to watch because they have enough talent that all of a sudden if it clicked, great. But without having any ramp up to that and watching like what we just watched with the Blue Jays over the month of September, I'm a little hard pressed to see that coming to fruition overnight. So.
Couldn't agree more. I hate to do this. I know I told you I've got about an hour here, so I've just got to get out.
I'm actually getting ready to wrap it up. So if you want to give your walk-off podcast sign-off, do your thing, man.
Absolutely. Just number one, I just want to say thank you to all of you in the chat right now that have been participating. It's always nice to chat Blue Jays with folks. You can catch the Walk-Off podcast on audio wherever you get your podcasts, and we're on YouTube. We just finished sitting down with John Gibbons, former manager of the Jays, last week. That's a fun episode. We had Ben Nicholson-Smith from Sportsnet on just a couple days ago, and we're just a couple boneheads here out of Alberta, but our guests are definitely worth listening to, so check it out.
Sell yourself at the right level, at least. You're comedians, not boneheads.
That's right. We're comedians. Bonehead comedians.
Good deal.
I'll check it out.
So there you go.
Sure.
All
Okay,
right,
thank
gang.
you very much, guys.
We'll get another one going, bud. Appreciate it.
Loud and proud tomorrow.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yep.
Okay, bye-bye.
So Caroline, seeing you're on with me, if you want to be the one that normally the way we end the Jaybird watching podcast is by doing 2 claps and a Ric Flair, which I don't know if you are familiar from what Caleb Joseph was doing with the Toronto Blue Jays right before the 2020 playoffs, which is 2 claps and you go, woo! So typically it would be a 1, 2, 3, and we go, woo! Let's go Blue Jays, and make sure you find us on the Jaybird Watching Podcast, wherever you get your podcasting pleasures from. Live show recording on Monday evening at 7 o'clock Eastern time. That is a normal everyday week with my team. And make sure you find us here for these wonderful podcasts that we're going to do before each series for